tonight we have Cambria talking about how bioenergetics, or the electrical potential of the cell and mitochondria, determines your health. So this sounds like a really exciting topic. Before we get started, let me go ahead and mute everyone else so we don't have background noise. All right, Cambria, I'm going to turn it over to you, and just let me know if you want me to go ahead and launch your presentation.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start the slideshow.
Okay.
Okay, so this is me. I have been practicing functional medicine for probably the last 10, 12 years. I started actually before that, but these are the different certifications that I have. I've been trained by the Institute of Functional Medicine. I'm trained in the Bredesen protocol. He's a neurologist who wrote the book, The End of Alzheimer's. Trained by Dr. William Walsh in terms of the biochemistry of the brain and mental health issues, and then also the Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. So dealing with a lot of kids with autism and spectrum disorders and optimizing their biochemistry. So my philosophy is that we try to address the root cause of disease rather than just band-aiding or treating the symptoms. So Dr. Jeffrey Bland is basically the father of functional medicine, who brought to us this sort of age-old belief that our health is basically a combination of the genes and the environment. So nature plus nurture. The philosophy that basically if we create the optimal environment, then our genes and our body is going to function optimally. Early on in like the early 1980s, there came about all of these different names for what we do, but basically I want to distinguish the difference between functional medicine and a lot of these other alternative medicines is that our practice is based on science. So functional medicine is, especially Institute of Functional Medicine, is incredibly science-based. The way that it started is he found that there wasn't really any kind of cohesive organized thought process that went into all of these different areas that had potential, and he brought together a team and did the due diligence and basically started bringing science into these systems and found out that the studies that were the most conclusive and that was the foundation of functional medicine, is to bring true science to alternative practices that may be helpful. Next slide. So functional medicine is basically looking at the underlying cause. We are looking below the surface of the iceberg. Because once you get to the point of the iceberg, you already have a lot of damage. And that's the whole point of our differing view of the way to combat chronic disease. So this is just briefly the functional medicine matrix. It has revolutionized the way that we think about medicine, because you've got, rather than organ systems, you've got biological systems. So you've got assimilation, which has got structural integrity, which is where we do a lot of the Electro-Equiscope work, the muscles, bones, structure. Hormones is communication, transport is cardiovascular, detoxification, energy, and then the immune system. And then we have to remember that in the middle, we've got your mental, emotional, spiritual. And we don't stop there, but we look into the genetics and what happened when the baby was in utero, and what were the triggering events and the perpetuators, and then what are the lifestyle factors that may be ongoing and either helping to modify the disease process or contribute to the worsening of disease. This is the software that I use, just briefly. It's the Ifm Software. It's really helpful, mostly in terms of the timeline and in terms of the schematic where you have the orange, because you can actually really show a patient where they are coming into problems. Like this one, for instance, has a big issue in defense and repair. And then the timeline is really fascinating too. In terms of the timeline, a lot of times you'll be going along and you'll see nothing of significance, and then all of a sudden you'll see a huge spike in events or disease processes. And sometimes you can actually talk to a patient and they don't even necessarily remember what exactly happened before all of the disease started. So that's a really good schematic and visual for the patient, and it also it gives us a lot of detail points in terms of where things really started to break down and where things started to go wrong. This is kind of the key of what we're talking about here. I mean, energy is basically the difference between being alive and being dead. And Dr. Haas said that basically it's the difference between being a cow and steak. So electrical potential across the cell membrane is what makes us alive. And this is what we can mitigate and impact with all of the functional medicine, all of the parameters, as well as the Equiscope. This is what the Equiscope is doing. We are we're depositing charge, increasing energy, improving circulation, decreasing inflammation. And then the beauty of it too is that, obviously it finds the body's impedance and over time hopefully decreases that impedance so that the circuitry works better. So this is the driver of life, and this is what we are impacting when we use the Electro-Acuscope. One of the things that we're impacting, and amazing little molecule, but little cellular structure, but is basically what distinguishes life from non-life. Next slide. This is where the percentage of mitochondria live. Basically, there's 80-some% of the mitochondria in between the brain, liver, and muscle. So we have to remember that the liver is a huge house of mitochondria, and then the brain, the mitochondria, they've done studies, the mitochondria in the brain actually have to work 5 times harder than the mitochondria elsewhere. So we really need to, these are the key areas where we're going to see things go wrong when we have what's called a mitochondropathy. So these are not necessarily things that you guys are going to be looking at, but these are just things that can be problems or things that you can look for when to suggest that there may be a mitochondrial issue going on. And more, migraines, headaches. I know that we have a lot of patients who have migraines, headaches, muscle wasting. So all of these things don't leave them out. And this is what I just wanted to kind of bring to all of your attention is that, yes, with the Equiscope, we can deposit charge and we can give some energy to the mitochondria, but if the mitochondria is missing CoQ10, if you don't have niacin or vitamin K or vitamin C or carnitine or fatty acids, there's proteins in here as well. So if you are missing these cofactors, you are not going to be able to get along the electric transport chain. So this is where functional medicine is really key because we actually test for all of these things and we can make sure that the patient has optimal nutrients for mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial issues are very prominent in pain syndrome. So I know that with the Electro-Acuscope, we see a lot of people with pain, and that may be a signal to you to also see if they might want to see somebody from a functional medicine standpoint to make sure that they have all of their cofactors for their mitochondria, just mostly so that when they get relief from the Equiscope, we're going to be able to make it last. Because if you get temporary, nobody likes to have patients who get relief that one day and then they come back, 24 hours later and they're in pain again. And some of it may be because they've got a lot of oxidative stress, they've got, they're missing CoQ10 or vitamin C, and so they can't hold the charge as well as somebody who has all of the cofactors to make it stick, so to say. Next area on our list in terms of what we're working on is inflammation with the Equiscope. So these are all diseases that where the driver is inflammation, and it is one of the major problems or contributors to most chronic diseases today. And we have beautiful studies that Lisa has done with using infrared imaging and the Equiscope. And so this is one of the great things that the Equiscope does but I want to show you on the next slide where we can use functional medicine to make it better. So if you have a lot of oxidative stress, your mitochondria are not going to function ideally. So these are things, again, that we test for. And one of the key things that is important to look at is that when you have a lot of oxidative stress, you are actually going to be putting the mitochondria potentially into a cell death response. So, and this is also important just for your knowledge that when there's a lot of oxidative stress, if you add fish oil to the system, you are actually going to fry it. So you're going to incorporate lipids into the phospholipid bilayer, which is where we are, having the electrical potential go across the cell, where they're incorporating basically fried, denatured fatty acids into the cell membrane. So it is really important to actually test for these things, to look at these levels before you just tell everybody to take fish oil because it's good for inflammation. Because there are situations where it's actually not, where it's actually harmful. So that is, in my opinion, what differentiates true functional medicine from a lot of these kind of integrative naturopaths who, some of them do a lot of testing, but a lot of them will just tell you to take a bunch of supplements. And what we do that is different is we actually test these levels and we look at what the body needs, and we basically are trying to achieve homeostasis. This is just an example of what one antioxidant on the mitochondrial transport chain, one of them by itself can do. It basically, in this study, just the addition of CoQ10 decreased major cardiac events by from 25% to 14%. So over a 10% difference in cardiac events, only with just adding CoQ10. So think about if you added all of the other cofactors that are on the mitochondrial transport, the electron transport chain. And what we found in this study was that not only did it decrease cardiac mortality or cardiac events, it decreased hospitalizations and actually decreased all-cause mortality. So we had, one nutrient that, if applied in the proper setting, was able to decrease all-cause mortality. This is another really important area that we'll talk about is glutathione in the liver. So basically, one of the things that we do with the Electro-Acuscope is we are going to be promoting detox. And one of the areas that, particularly in your sick patients, where you can get in trouble, is if you are promoting detox, but then you don't have the cofactors, the phase 2 enzymes or cofactors to be able to put a cap on the antennas or decrease oxidative stress, change the toxin from a circulating toxin to one that is bound that can then be taken out of the body. Just really super briefly, phase 1, there's 2 phases of detox that are important to know about because, a lot of us who've been doing Electro-Acuscope treatments, we know that you can have a detox effect. And so, and ideally, we don't want that, right? So I'm not of the opinion that feeling super sick when you detox is a good thing, because that means that you are liberating toxins and you are not binding to them so that they can get out of the body, and then they're recirculating, and it's a problem. So potentially, microcurrent is one of these things that can stimulate phase 1 detoxification. Yeah, and this is what happens with phase 1 is that we're pulling it out of the tissues, out of the muscles, out of the nerves, out of the brain, and basically it is creating a ton of free radicals. And this is actually, you're taking a toxin from a sort of dormant state, you're pulling it into the system where it's active. It's actually more toxic than it was before you started. And if you do not have the phase 2 conjugation enzymes and nutrients, then you're actually making them more sick. So phase 2 is what we really, really, really want to make sure that our patients have, particularly your sick patients. You might want to have them have a functional medicine evaluation before they even start treatments, because You want to make sure they've got enough protein, they've got enough B vitamins, all of the minerals, and glutathione. Glutathione is key. You can take it orally. It's not as effective orally. Ideally, it's given intramuscularly, but sometimes you can take it in a liposomal form, and that is somewhat useful. A nutrient that is rampantly deficient in our population is magnesium, because our soil is incredibly depleted. So at least 48% of the U.S. population is magnesium deficient. And magnesium, of course, we know has a positive charge. It is a key factor in the mitochondrial transport chain and the electron transport chain. And it's also, a mineral that makes the Equiscope function better and perform better. It's always going to work better if a person's hydrated and they've got, their minerals and electrolytes on board. Let's say you have somebody who comes in and their chief complaint is restless leg syndrome. In the functional medicine world, we're going to look at everything else that's going on. We're going to look at all the modifiable risk factors and what happened, before birth. And this is not to say that we need to address all of these things. It's just to say that this is the environment. This is what the person is coming to the table with. So yes, we are going to do what within reason, we meet the patient where they're at, and we're going to do what they're ready to do, but we just keep in mind where they are, and then potentially what modifiable lifestyle factors can we promote. Where do we think we're going to get the biggest impact if we use functional medicine in terms of helping with their hormones or their detox ability or oxidative stress, all of those types of things. These are all of the things that go into the decision making in terms of your functional medicine matrix. These are some of the labs, the specialty labs that we do for inflammation. It is really helpful to test these on a complex patient, because you're going to have before and after labs, and then you can, a lot of times when you do initiate behavior change, you're going to get them to, it's going to be reinforcing if you, let's say you start out with CRP of 4 and then you initiate your program and then they have a CRP of less than 1, and then they have something concrete to show them that they're doing better. Hormones aren't a huge factor in terms of the Electro-Acuscope, but I just bring it up because it is a factor in what may be going on with the patient and how well they're going to do. So in my opinion, when the hormones are balanced, when you make sure that you've got at least the precursor hormones and your vitamin D, your thyroid, the body's going to function better. These are some of the things that we need to be aware that we potentially can be liberating when we start to use the Equiscope. And we do want to think about, phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification, and do they have enough? How sick are they, right? So are they at risk of having a detox reaction? And then certainly, Lisa is often available to sort of maybe modify the protocols so that you do different frequencies depending on, how much detox you want to promote or not. Obviously, we're increasing circulation with the Equiscope, but we do want to think about the health of the blood that we are circulating, right? So if we are circulating, if we have triggered detox and we're circulating, we've only triggered phase 1 and they don't have enough phase 2, and we're triggering circulation, then we can actually be recirculating toxins in through the system. So, or if they have a lot of oxidative stress and they have a lot of plaques and buildup, not necessarily we're going to cause a stroke, but we would like to have the lab values to show that when we increase circulation, we are circulating the healthiest blood possible, so that you are going to then get the cellular healing, you're going to get the healthy mitochondria, you're going to get all of those beautiful things that you're looking for in terms of increasing circulation. This is something that we deal with a lot. Trauma, not necessarily just head injuries, but a lot of sports injuries. The therapeutics can be tailored for that. Even in an athlete, if you're doing functional medicine, you can really put in the ideal nutrients to optimize your treatment in terms of microcurrent, whether it be omega-3s, whether it be antioxidants. Sometimes, particularly in terms of healing the brain, sometimes you're going to want to actually give more fat. And if you have enough antioxidants on board, high dose omega-3s can be really helpful in terms of head injury. When somebody comes in with pain, just to keep in mind that you may be dealing with some of these other factors, metabolic influences, which of course is your mitochondria, biochemical stuff, different toxins, lifestyle factors. Are they exercising? How much are they moving? And then also emotional, because there is an emotional factor to pain as well. This is us again, and what we are trying to do with the beautiful Equiscope is get nutrients in, toxins out, and increase circulation, decrease inflammation, increase energy, and then find the impedance and decrease it. We are trying to increase the strength of the dielectrode, but you also want to make sure that this beautiful cell has a healthy phospholipid bilayer, and that it has all the nutrients and all the mitochondria has all the cofactors to make that ATP. So you want that beautiful cell to be in the best environmental soup that you can deliver. And lastly, we are more than the medicine that we prescribe. We are more than just the Equiscope, than functional medicine. Your intention as a healer can really make all the difference. They have done actual true studies on a person who comes in for, let's say, influenza, and they have a therapeutic encounter, right? And this is like before Tamiflu, or let's say they come in for a URI. They have a therapeutic encounter with somebody who's listening, who really cares, who's actually nurturing and trying to help, and they're present, right? And then you have a sort of neutral person who doesn't really give you anything in terms of energy, but they aren't negative. And then you have a toxic interaction. And they have found that the people who come in for an illness that technically there's nothing to do about, that they do much better, they get better quicker, and they have less severity of symptoms when they have a therapeutic interaction than if they have a negative one, they actually do worse. So when you are using the Equiscope, when I'm using functional medicine, it is not just take your vitamin D and do your CoQ10. I am trying to be present with the patient, have my intention to be a healer. And, when you have that device in your hand, and I've felt this with my horses, when you have the device in your hand, it is an extension of you, right? It's an extension. Yes, you're hooked up to electricity, but it is an extension of you. So you actually also, to be the best healer that you can, you need to have your intention be pure. You need to be present. You need to want that person to get better. And yes, we're more than the medicine that we prescribe. This is our beautiful office in Encinitas, and this is me. Any questions?
Hi, I'm Tony Marino. I'm an orthodontist, retired.
Hey.
I've been using the Acuscope and Myopulse for a little while, on and off.
Okay.
Love your presentation, by the way. Oxidative stress seems to be a big name right now.
Yeah.
I just got a hold of a network marketing product called ProTandem. Have you heard of it? NRF1 and NRF2? I just have these little bottles right here.
Okay.
These little gems. They're there.
Okay.
Okay, so the big deal with these things here is, what do you do with oxidative stress? No doctor or physician that I know of even deals with testing for oxidative stress.
Yeah.
There are some...
I test lipid peroxidase. I test all of the actual levels of your antioxidants. You can test total glutathione. You can test vitamin C, CoQ10, vitamin E. Most people have a deficiency in gamma E, which is the only thing that has been proven to reduce LP(a). So, I test for not just lipid peroxidases to see if your fats are actually getting fried, but I also test all of the individual nutrients, and you can get those tests through Quest or LabCorp.
Got a question too. Have you ever used something called a biomeridian or a Syra? It's an energetic way of doing all this testing.
I have, and sometimes I don't have one in my office, but sometimes I find that they're pretty on, and sometimes they miss things. So I think that if you're kind of looking for a quick and dirty and you're going to try and get some hints, but you're not delving in, you don't need to be that specific. You know, it can give you a good kind of overview. But
okay.
Yeah, the best way, in my opinion, is to get blood levels. And there's a lot of things that, like, there's a test that you can get through DHA labs that is actually it's a urine pyrroles test. Pyrroles are produced when there are high levels of oxidative stress. So if that's just sort of a general, just like lipid peroxidases, are your fats getting fried? The urine pyrroles are produced in the environment of high oxidative stress. So they actually have shown that there's a higher incidence of schizophrenia, for instance, with high pyrroles, because your brain that is mostly fat is getting fried, and the lipid bilayers are getting denatured. And so pyrroles, urine pyrroles, and that's like an $82 test. That is a quick and dirty, if you don't want to test each antioxidant, that's a quick and dirty way to see if you have huge oxidative stress.
Got another question for you. Because I noticed that you mentioned something about kids that are autistic and such, and you've had some success with those children.
I have 2 kids that actually are autistic, and that's what got me into the whole functional medicine world, is that they weren't getting better, and now my son is in college and my daughter is just kind of right. So if you apply all of these things to kids with autism, they are gonna get better.
Okay, I'm in my office right now. My daughter's floating around. She's 32. She has global developmental delays, of course.
Okay.
And we've been looking for solutions for her forever. That's how we started with the Acuscope and Myopulse many years ago. I'd love to talk to you a little further about that.
Yeah, so you can I'll give you guys my email. I'm happy to jump on the phone with you. But basically, my son, who's now 23, he was so severe that he was actually institutionalized when he was 4 years old. And he now is in college and drives. And 20 years ago, what I was doing is seeking out everything and anything that could possibly get him better. And I put him on a ketogenic diet at age 3 and gave him like magnesium and calcium to help him sleep. So I've been at this a long time, and the brain, and again, Dr. Bredesen is the other end of the spectrum. He is a neurologist who wrote The End of Alzheimer's. So basically, my point is that there is incredible resiliency to the brain. Truly, truly incredible resiliency. And with Dr. Bredesen, we have actually been able to show that you can actually, on MRI, you can change the volume of the brain with instituting functional medicine and like the Bredesen protocol, for instance. We have shown like a 25% growth in the hippocampal volume. So back in the day, we were taught that, the brain, once you get past a certain age, your brain is what you have is what you've got. And that is not the case anymore. There is so much stuff that we can do to actually remodel the brain into your 80s. So
that's what I was going to ask you.
Yes.
Age. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we do find that, like with my dementia patients, that sometimes once they have gotten to a certain point, the level of improvement that we can make, if I've had patients who come in and they are at a point where they don't talk and they're bedridden and they're, spoon fed. And, if you have like 0 function, you're not going to get to 100, right? But there is a huge spectrum. The earlier you get it, the better. But there's a huge amount that can be done no matter how old you are. So
excellent. Thank you. I'd love to talk more to you. When I was in orthodontics, I dealt with a lot of children, and the big thing that I was dealing with was 3 to 5 year old kids special needs kids as well. They had sleep disordered breathing, sleep apnea.
Yep.
We used an oral appliance and worked really great. We got a lot of kids off the surgery table so they didn't need their adenoid tonsils removed. Yeah. So I'm just thinking with what you're doing and what I was doing, combining both of these technologies would be
that would be fantastic.
Dynamite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure that with MTHFR, there's all the genetics too is starting to come into this too. So with MTHFR, you can't use nitrous anymore in orthodontics because or not orthodontics, but in dentistry, because those are the kids that are going to end up with a really high homocysteine and potentially do bad. So all of these biochemical pathways and knowing the genetics and knowing about the environment of the body is going to help us in so many ways.
Okay, then when you're dealing with TMJ, I did a paper on this some years ago with the Acuscope and Myopulse. It was probably it was the first paper I think that was done. This was in 2006. It was a Harvard Press release. There's copies of it somewhere. What is your work with TMJ? Because I'm looking at head and neck pain to extend and to do further practice, not orthodontics anymore, but deal with head and neck pain. Are you working with that?
My thought in terms of a functional medicine perspective with TMJ is what first comes to mind is mitochondria. Is there something going on with mitochondria? Oxidative stress, and then also viral. Sometimes there can be Epstein-Barr or different herpes viruses can be in the nerve root, and you can get a lot of pain, muscle pain related to those viruses. So those viruses like to stick in the muscles, not necessarily just the jaw, but when I have people with chronic pain, I tend to also do viral studies on them. I'll do Epstein-Barr, HHV6, and then sometimes HSV1 and 2, just to see kind of where they're at. And then sometimes I'll do like a course of Valtrex or acyclovir if they have really high levels.
One last question. Would you be interested if I could get you on board to speak to dentists that do head and neck pain? And I'm talking on a global level. We have a neuromuscular group that's in Europe and in Asia. I am not directly affiliated with them. They use other electronic devices that are mediocre compared to what you're using with the Equiscope and the Acuscope and the Myopulse. But nonetheless, this is a trendy deal coming back again into dentistry.
Okay, great. Oh, I would love to. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep you in mind.
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you, Cambria. This is Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
And for everybody that's still on the call, I just can't say enough about how much I love Cambria and what a brilliant, brilliant practitioner with such a huge heart and so much skill. I'm just honored to work with her, and for everyone out there that's working with patients or clients in Equiscope, if you need a consult, she does.
I'm happy to hop on the phone.
Yeah, she's happy to get on the phone and just answer questions, but she's just a phenomenal practitioner. We're really blessed to have her in our network and as part of our team, and I really love this presentation. Thank you so much, Cambria.
Oh, you're welcome.
And awesome. To get your contact information.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we had a gal just to kind of put a nail on the head in terms of how powerful functional medicine plus the Equiscope can be, is we had a super complex case where she had complex chronic pain syndrome, she had her nerves stimulated and implanted, and she was on all these opioids, and basically we treated her with the Equiscope and functional medicine, and she had so many lab abnormalities that she did not know about, and she came to us, we corrected her abnormalities. We got her on a super healthy diet, at least while she was there, right? I mean, who knows if I went home with her, but while she was there and while she was detoxing and had her on lots of veggies, lots of electrolytes, lots of water, healthy food, and she was able to turn off her nerve stimulator that she had on for Lisa, how many years was that?
I know it was at least 1, but I think it was closer to 3 because she had 2 stimulators implanted.
When we pair the optimal biochemistry for the body to heal with the Equiscope, it is just, the body wants to heal. And if we can give it the right environment and biochemically as well as energetically, like what we can do together is so much more powerful than either of us alone. Would be happy to talk to you guys. She also had high levels of Epstein-Barr, which can be, a huge factor in chronic fatigue and chronic pain. So once you get the body back in balance, it's not like you need to take the antivirals forever, but they are opportunistic and they are going to come to the forefront when the body is under stress and when you have certain nutrient deficiencies. So
I personally like to stay on an antiviral diet and supplement regimen.
Yeah. And a lot of people need to do that. It really just depends on their biochemistry. If some people you can get away with like treating it short term, but with a lot of people we are finding that if it's persistent, that they need to be on some kind of protocol. And whether that's, the natural stuff like L-lysine and monolaurin and the antiviral diet, or if some people will take like acyclovir 1 week out of every month just to kind of keep it at a sort of suppressed level. So there's lots of ways around it. And if you understand the biochemistry, you can modify treatment. If some people don't necessarily want to use drugs, they want to go more natural. Some people just want something that's going to work quick. Doesn't mean that either way is wrong. That is the beauty of functional medicine, is having all these tools in your toolbox. So I've got, a traditional medicine background from Columbia and UCLA, and then I've got 20 years of functional medicine to put on top of that. So it just allows me to have a much bigger toolbox in terms of what to be able to offer people.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would just add that in my experience of seeing patients and clients under technicians and doctors with Equiscope, is that the people that have like increased pain, it's either because they have a viral overload or it's because the scar tissue itself is re-educating. Mm-hmm. And I find that sometimes if there's no result, which is rare, but there's that rare occasion where people are getting no result. And that's usually because the hydration and the mineral level is so low that their body can't even take it in.
Right.
So that's why it's so important for the practitioners to be looking at these things. And I just so love functional medicine. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we chose the name Intelligent Bioenergetics, was because I had audited the AFMCP through functional medicine while I was pregnant with our first daughter, who's now 13. And John became certified, and I just absolutely fell in love with the new medical model that they created, and the fact that a portion of it is for bioenergetics.
Exactly.
It fits hand in glove.
It does. It does. It really does.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you again, and thank you everybody for being on the call. I really appreciate it. Have a beautiful one.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.